Been covering the digital disruption for the last 25 years. So what you guys are going through now, we've seen this before. And we've seen it, we've covered it, and we've talked about it in both events and in our online journalism, through books, through tech, through apparel, through banking, through travel, through auto, through publishing, and many more. The ways in which digital upstarts and the digital channels and the fragmentation of attention have impacted almost all different industries. And some of it is the same old story. New generations of intermediaries promise to bring new scale and efficiency to an old industry, but the price is they'll preempt or hijack your relationship with your consumer. We have seen this happen again and again. Digital makes frenemies. They've been doing it now for over 20 years. QSR, of course, is a little bit different. And this has been, honestly, for me as a journalist who's been covering digital for the last 25 years, QSR has proven to be a really interesting take on an old story because there are a lot of interesting twists here. You guys are being disrupted in a lot of multiple ways at once. It's coming at you in a lot of different ways. First of all, of course, and we'll be talking about this a lot, the delivery economy and the ways in which food delivery is really changing the game on a lot of different levels. But of course, before that, you were already having to deal with food directory apps and ratings apps that were sort of changing the ways in which consumers were getting to you and discovering you and talking about you. But then there's the radically changing eating habits. Takeout is the new home cooking. And it has really changed and created tremendous new opportunities, new diversity in the whole food market. And these digital channels also fundamentally change the nature of the competitive landscape. Delivery and the takeout craze blur a lot of the old categories of what is and isn't a QSR now, and what types of food different providers offer. You know, I go to Wawa for my subs. I hadn't even thought about that a few years ago. And then you layer onto that some of the most familiar of the disruptions that we've already seen, overall fragmentation of media attention, and how it makes brand building and awareness retention a nightmare of unattributed scattershot media buying for everybody. So, but now, unlike a lot of other industries that have been disrupted before, people are still really hungry. You can always bank on that, and Uber Eats is not going to start cooking for them anytime soon. So you definitely have that in your favor. And you also have a whole generation of helicopter parents who barely knew how to cook for themselves, let alone traumatize their kids about how to cook. So there's a lot of upside to this market. In some ways, a lot of upside that isn't present in some of the other markets that have been disrupted. And over the next few days, we're going to hit on a lot of these points. We're going to talk about delivery. We're going to talk about loyalty and the new shape of data-driven CRM. We're going to talk about the evolving customer journey. We're going to be talking about fragmentation of media and the challenges that's making for everybody when it comes to allocation and attribution. And of course, we'll be talking about the social channels and how they do and don't perform for you. But we start, as we do with all of these summits, with you. These summits are really about peer-to-peer sharing of best practices. That's the model that we've been following in these events, these insider summits, for the last 15 years. So what I'd like to do is really start with your opinions. Now, I'm about to assault you with a monstrous deck that is of your own making. Those of you the marketers in the group, you know that I surveyed you several days ago, and I asked a key set of questions. And these are sort of the setup questions for the event itself. And I got back volumes of response. There are 30 slides in this deck. I promise you I'm not reading them all. But I am going to summarize some of them and try to poke up some of the themes that we'll be talking about over the next few days. By the way, this entire deck with all of the direct responses from all of you is now online. If you go to the agenda for the event and look over this opening remark, you'll see the full deck with all the detail. But I'm going to dance through just some of this stuff because there were some really interesting comments, and it really sets the tone for some of the thoughts that a lot of you are bringing to this event. So we started by asking, what's been the biggest marketing challenge you've faced in the last year? And most responses tended to be tended to be media related. A lot about attribution modeling with so many channels, so many incompatible and hard to measure channels, incompatibility across platforms. Of course, we're seeing a whole range of walled gardens, not only the old ones, but the new ones. And of course, also attributing, and please don't try to read these, they're all online, you can go and peruse them later. later, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of good pieces. How you budget and allocate for digital media buys and budgeting across this, but also attributing to all these different channels is one of the key challenges, but also balancing budget across new customer acquisition as well as customer relationship. Allocation across acquisition and attention, but also budget constraints, increased competition, continuing to find ways to stand out and connect with your customers. We're going to be talking about brand building, in fact, in the next couple of, today, but also technology. The simple complexity of the customer journey for QSR now, the ways in which your customers now sometimes are being forced into a whole set of technical hurdles just to get to you. I'm a vegan and I have a local vegan restaurant and they won't even let me call them directly anymore. I have to go through a whole series of technical hoops just to get my food from them unless I want to go and wait for half an hour. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble reading our own stuff. The idea of the ways in which categories are actually being changed, and everyone is a competitor now. The ways in which the lines are blurring across categories, and different people are using these new opportunities to encroach upon new categories. Next, I asked, where have you seen the biggest shifts in your media marketing spend in the last 2 years? Overall, almost everyone is moving budgets to digital. They're all insisting that digital is giving them a much greater handle on measurability and accountability. But there's also some, one of the things that I've seen is there's some disagreement in talking to you directly. There's some disagreement about the effectiveness of social. That's going to be one of the things that I think we'll be talking about over next couple of days. Some, like this marketer, finds that there's full funnel value in social, but there are others who are finding much different results, or finding a lot of difficulty in customer acquisition on social. And again, a lot of move into mobile and digital channels throughout. And a lot of people who are saying they actually are really fundamentally pulling and significantly pulling budget away from traditional channels and moving into digital. Interestingly, though, here's someone, just to sort of give you an illustration of the range of approaches. Here's someone who's actually pulling money out of digital and finding a whole series of very traditional direct channels to drive people and to move people into their loyalty and online programs. Next, I asked, what's been the biggest benefit from working with the new generation of delivery providers? And of course, almost everyone agrees that these platforms are finding new customers for you in a lot of different ways, exposing the brands, broadening the audience, brand exposure, new and different audiences being brought in, also being able to attribute some sales lift, if not profitability, to these channels. And the ability to, you know, as you can see here, some of our restaurants are now generating as much as nearly 40% of their sales from delivery. Some of you have reported to me that in some regions you're actually up to over 60% is now coming through this channel. Some of you have even seen this transition happen just within the last 2 years, which fundamentally, of course, challenges your whole infrastructure and the way you work and the workflow at individual restaurants. This is one of my favorites, my favorite responses to this question. The biggest benefit has actually been the hardships we've dealt with as a consumer of said delivery providers. We were able to partner up with Lunchbox and use all those struggles as a consumer to launch our brand new app and online ordering. By seeing the ways in which the delivery platforms are screwing things up, you were able to build your own. I thought that was one of my favorite answers. I've also asked what's been the biggest challenge, of course, in working with these delivery platforms. They were diverse but insistent. Almost everyone, of course, is mentioning the pressure on margins, the percentage cut that delivery systems are taking, but also the idea that it can overwhelm the business itself. One of the things I think a lot of industries have seen is when they turn on a lot of Amazon partners, for instance, found in retail, that once you turn on that spigot, it often can disrupt your entire workflow. One of the things that came up a lot has been the inconsistent quality among the delivery platforms and the ways in which it pushes the consumer into often very uneven experiences and puts the customer out of the control of the brand itself. Another thing that I heard a lot of, especially in discussions with many of you individually, is the customer service on a lot of these platforms. I think several of you mentioned to me, we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars through these platforms and I can't even get them to answer the phone. One of the interesting things that's happening among the delivery platforms right now is that in many ways they're not ready for their own success. They don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the customer relationships, and they don't even have the B2B relationships in place or the knowledge or the experience really to service both your industry but also service the consumers effectively. And again, customer service. They have changing teams. They're living like startups, but they're moving into a world that has a lot of established patterns and a lot of established customer support traditions, and they're not quite ready for it. Pricing, of course, and the need, at least from this perspective, the need to really raise prices so that margins can increase. And of course, a lot of contention over data, the ways in which all of you can access their platforms as advertising vehicles, but especially that we're seeing here the rise of yet another walled garden, another digital disruptor that's insisting, just give us your customers, don't worry, we're not going to cannibalize your users. But we've seen this happen over the last 15 years in a lot of different categories. The same pattern emerges. I asked what marketing channel or approach has been most successful in driving growth in the last year. Many of you, despite all of the woes with delivery platforms, cite that delivery and off-premise has really been the strongest of the drivers for growth. Like most marketers being disrupted by digital, most brands are trying to find ways of using loyalty programs and first-party data. One of the things that the walled gardens have done over the last 10, 15 years is to drive greater interest and the greater value in first-party data and collecting that first-party data to have that direct relationship with the consumer, to be able to use it not only to have the direct relationship, but also to use it for much more targeted advertising and recapturing and retargeting them on the online advertising ecosystem. And again, focusing on loyalty, focusing on leveraging first-party data across the different platforms. And also a range of different approaches, from social to search. Search came up a number of times in talking to you as one of the more effective ways, especially to drive people towards your online ordering, but also the role of TV advertising. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the role of TV advertising in a second. And then I asked, I thought this was an interesting idea of actually pulling back. Although the trend is towards diversification of menu and menu expansion, here was an idea where they found success by actually focusing on their own best sellers. It not only helped reinforce the idea of the brand and brought the brand back to its core competencies, but it also focused their own staff on focusing on a few core products. And then finally I asked, what's been the most disappointing? We always get a range of, I always ask this question of all marketers, what have been the most disappointing channels that they work with? Programmatic display, actually in the last couple of years has sort of emerged as one of the ones that is often pointed to, so you're not alone. But also, and this is interesting, and this will be worth talking about, especially I think in the roundtables, is influencer marketing. The ways in which it's difficult to track, the way in which many marketers seem to think that it's peaked, that it's overpriced, and that it's not really delivering what it's been promising. And also as I said, a diversity of opinion about social media, how to use it. Again, I think this is a topic that will come up a lot in the roundtables because as I was talking to you personally, as I was getting a lot of your responses, one of the things I noticed is there's a range of feelings about how social media works. There are a lot of people who are really having trouble making it really move incremental sales and drive traffic. And then finally, terrestrial radio, one that actually, I'm wondering, how many of you are using podcasting? I'd be curious to see if that, since it's a highly localized and effective driver for a lot of categories, I'd be interested in if that's going to be an emerging category. Anyway, all of these are up online. You'll be able to read through them in detail there. But that's how we start here, is we want to start with your perspectives and your views, because that's really the fodder for the way this summit works. Just some basic summit rules for those of you who haven't been here before. Everything that we do on stage, because we're MediaPost, we're the largest publisher of this stuff online, everything is on the record. We're live streaming it over MediaPost.com. We'll archive it, we'll report it, we're live blogging it. But then at noon, we all come off stage and go off the record. And the roundtables, I can't emphasize enough how important the roundtables are to this experience. We've been doing this now for 15 years, and we're told again and again that the roundtables at the end of every morning really are the heart of the summit. It takes the ideas, the examples from on stage, and it activates them into real conversations for all of you. So I urge you, do not go out and grab that phone call. Do not go out and do that quick meeting. Stay in and do the roundtables. They really do pay off, and it activates discussions that you'll take out in activities and in the evening meetings this afternoon and this evening. It's really the heart of what we do. And a lot of you have said to me, and think more so than any other summit that I've programmed over the years, as I've talked to a lot of you, one of the things that I've heard most often from this group is, I'm really interested in hearing what other people are doing with fill in the blank. And that means that the roundtables, I think, really are going to be energized. In fact, one of the interesting things that I found about programming this summit is how QSR as a category has so many emerging players, so many localized and regional brands that still have their founders involved, that still imbue the entire organization with a distinct and different culture, that you're all coming at it from many different directions and all have unique experiences, all have unique marketing cultures within a lot of your companies. It's really been exciting to discover a lot of these companies that, because I'm in the Northeast, I've never heard of before. But I think we're going to have a great time here, really discussing and exchanging ideas. So welcome to all of you. But we're going to start with going the opposite direction of a lot of the regional and smallers, with one of the kings. And one of the kings not only of QSR, but also one of the kings of media in QSR, Burger King. Even the biggest of the QSR brands still has to struggle and rethink the ways in which they use media. We are in that fragmented an environment. Not only watching the consumer journey transform radically in discovering brands and making decisions, but also the ways in which the media itself had fragmented into TV, OTT, social. To talk us through the ways in which he is helping Burger King rethink the ways in which it comes at media, but also the ways in which it attributes those different media, is Jorge Oliveira, who is the lead media, digital, and social channels at Burger King. He's been with Burger King for several years. He's been leading the charge with transforming